Hi, it's oh, are we ready? Sorry, Gary. Gary's not smiling. We'll have to oh, there it is. He does. Right, okay. Hi everybody. It's Guest Safety Officer Lobby Group episode 28, I believe. Welcome to Gary.
Morning, Ian. How are you doing?
Oh, we're doing fine, thank you. Have you got anything that you'd like to tell us?
Yeah, well, what I'm talking about today is we're looking at the state of what's going on in the retail world.
The retail world, yeah, I think it's very interesting. I think we've both seen a couple of videos, haven't we?
We certainly have. I also seen the one recently where the security guard was assaulted. I think it was in Sainsbury's, where he's actually pushed around, and I think the staff from Sainsbury's had to protect him.
Well, yeah, I thought that was, there will no doubt be there'll be those that say, "Oh yeah, mate, well he should have been doing this, and he should have stood like 2 paces back," and as though it's his fault. But I don't think it is actually.
No, I agree with you. I mean, also, I mean, we saw the other video of the looting in the shop in London recently.
Yeah.
Again, that's another thing what we're discussing today. What is this really all about, and why are these people think they can just go into these shops and do what they want?
Well, yes, and obviously there was the situation. There was the program the other day, Newsnight, which featured the co-op, representatives from the co-op, representative from, I think it was John Lewis, and Daniel Garnham was on there as well. And I will give him his due as apparently representing the Security Industry Federation. I will give him his due that he was quite right when he turned around and said that the security guards aren't allowed to do anything. Now, that brings me on to what I want to talk about with us here at Guest Safety Officer Lobby Group, because as you know, we have different approaches to what's necessary, why on the importance of a union or the non-importance of a union, which obviously you and I don't think is necessary for our particular sector. But I do want to focus, and the thing that struck me most of all about this is, what is the point of security in a retail shop?
Well, that's the whole idea of of retail. There is prevention, isn't it? It's have someone there to prevent crime, disorder, and to have someone there to prevent loss, isn't it? That's the whole idea. Loss prevention as well. You mustn't forget that. And the whole idea is you've got that person there to deter, and that's the principle behind it.
How are they? I worked in, just so that people know, I actually worked as a retail manager for 9 years. I worked for Tesco's, Asda, and a couple of other of the major retail sectors. And that was in the 80s. Well, you couldn't chase after them then. You couldn't chase after anybody then, but we didn't have security per se stood on the door because it was a waste of time. In fact, I can remember when I was working in London, we used to have a call, and if a gang of youths arrived, all the males were expected to go to the front of the store and prevent them leaving or doing whatever it was that they intended to do. And it worked, strangely enough. But there were nobody with badges, Gary, and the police weren't attending then.
They don't attend now half the time, Ian. That's look at reality. That's the whole idea, is having security to prevent this, but it's not happening. As you said, a lot of these let's say supermarket chains, they have a hands-off policy, and we've heard of things in the past where security officers chased someone down the road and they fell over and they died because they were carrying bottles and bits and pieces, and that's their license because they chased them down the road.
But they not only lose the licenses, I mean, as I say, we were telling people then not to do it. That was, as I say, that was early 2080. Sorry, 2080. Gosh, that's getting on a bit, isn't it? No, sorry, in 1979, when I went and started working in supermarkets. And that was one of the first things I was told. You do not chase people, because if they go outside and they fall over, they could knock someone else over, and then an innocent person could potentially die. And it just isn't worth it for a tin of beans, basically. And that's right. And supermarkets are right to do that. But if that's the case, why are we employing somebody with a badge? What's it for? So is it a tick box event for insurance companies, Gary, or is it there to genuinely, what are they going to do? Or just take note? I take it they're just there then to take notes. Is that right?
That's all they can do. And if you've got a hands-off policy and you can't chase after someone and you can't detain someone, that's all it is. I mean, I remember going back a few years ago, or several years ago, working for a big department store, and they had undercover store detectives, and they would detain people as soon as they stepped outside the shop, because then it becomes shoplifting. That department store no longer exists now, but I think they were very hands-on with it, and they had a very good success record of keeping the crime down in the shop. But things have changed since then, as you say. Is this hands-off policy is tied everybody's hands? What is the point of having someone there just to take notes, to look good, to look pretty? Yep. Or as you said, is it there for a tick box? And I think a majority of the time it is a tick box for the insurance. Yeah. It keeps the insurance in play. Have you got security there? Tick box, done. How many security officers do we need? Oh, we only need one.
Is it well exactly? In reality, given the way it's going to be dealt with, subsequently dealt with anyway, then essentially it's about the security officers there to act as I suppose as an independent third party witness to the threat, to the theft. They've recorded what's occurred, and they've informed the police, and they've been able to provide a statement to the police, and therefore a crime number. There is an auditable process from both the police side and from the store side, that the crime number that's there is valid, and there is an evidence chain behind it. There may be more to it than that, and hopefully, if there is, others will say so. But as I said, that's security side of things. So in shoplifting in shops, and we could talk briefly about what happened with the shoplifters per se, in terms of why were they there? Social media, yeah. And as we were discussing, I was part of the UK Crowd Management Association meeting last night, which was really nice, by the way. Anybody who didn't attend should. And we discussed this. And one of the things that we brought up was the immediacy that social media offers to get a gathering. How do you cope with that? At any event, if Billy Blogs phones up Jenny Blogs and says, "Here, let's go raid this, do the other," on TikTok, how are you going to prevent that?
You can't, Ian. I mean, it's funny you should mention that, because I'm just finishing off my crowd science diploma with Professor Keith Still, and this is one of the things they brought up. How can you stop the social media, and how are you going to stop this crowd surging? Because it's one of the most difficult things there, because most places haven't got it in play to deal with. And you look at anything like the Harrods, when they remember the Harrods used to have their big sales, and people used to surge in like anything. Yeah. And this is the thing, that social media, when it happens, you haven't got enough staff, you haven't got enough facilities in place to deal with it.
Oh, it's true. And in Oxford Street, you know, there was a target. They obviously targeted JD Sports, but you know, and it was other shops were complimented that they were able to get their customers inside and keep them safe, etc., etc. So, you know, is there an awareness? Did they have a policy, or were they just fortunate that they weren't targeted on that particular occasion for it? Because my view is with that kind of ability to communicate in that fashion, it means, what surprises me is that this hasn't happened more. It doesn't happen more often, although I'm absolutely certain it does happen in terms of organising, with just basic organised crime, shoplifting. But
well, just to interrupt, I mean, put it this way, it happens a lot, but not on such a large scale.
yeah.
Apple, in Oxford Street, they had they used to have loads of people surging just to take stuff. They used to have a lot, and their policy again was, it might have changed now, but this was go back a few years. Their policy was just let them go, and people, they literally, you'd get groups of youths in there, just go and take what they want and run away with it. End of story. But you know, we're talking about the Oxford Street thing. Again, that's they've got an advantage in that area. For one, the amount of police presence in the centre of London is always massive. Two, I think the West End, what was it called, the new West End company, they employed a large security presence, which for local retailers down there. So again, they have security presence. I think you've got people like my local Bobby as well, which are employed by Westminster Council to patrol the area. So they have a very large security contingent in that area, not just police. So for them to deal with that situation, which I understood, is they had all these people in play, which helped prevent things getting worse. But as you say, other shops being targeted, I think they were just lucky, absolutely targeted, because JD Sports was the target shop. And at the end of the day, if they wanted to rush in there and take what they wanted, they could have done. You know, and I'm not sure if the video I gave you came from JD Sports or another shop, but you know, if they're going to do it, they do it, and there's not a lot you can do about it.
Well, that's true. But what a sort of, and I will just say this, because I'm hoping that at some point, one of my friends, Rendell Monroe, he was he fought for the world championship at his weight division a few years ago. Rendell, the bin man Monroe, that's what he's fighting. I didn't even know that at the time when I first met him and interviewed him. But what he does is he works with excluded children, etc., and children that are having problems at school. And he runs he runs a place for them to go to, and he is funded for that. Yeah, Triple X is his company, and they look after these kids. And yet, strangely enough, as soon as the holidays arrive, his funding stops. So where can these kids go? They've had some kind of structure beforehand. Now they've got none. These excluded kids that are already presumably different. That is not to say that every child that was in Oxford Street that day was an excluded child. But do you see what I mean? Have you got any thoughts?
I mean, that's another path. I mean, we're looking at, going back many years. There was a lot of funding for youth organisations, council, bits and pieces. Even when I used to do my Thai boxing training, we were funded by local police. Can't remember which it was, the Met Constabulary, but they funded youths to come in and be trained Thai boxing. But this was happening all over London. Not sure about the UK, but there was always places like community centres, places for the kids to go, and role models for people, for them to see and understand. And it was a very successful thing. But I'm not too sure if this crosses over. Perhaps it does, perhaps it doesn't. But social media is a big thing now. Everybody wants to be somebody. I mean, there was that chap who went in someone's house. He's ridden a bike. That's the fella. And then even went down to Westfields you know, and he's got a big following, and because he's got this staff following because he's doing stupid things, you know, he thinks he can get away with it, and what we're losing is, you know, we're losing our moral fibers into understanding human abilities and understanding what is right and what is wrong. We're walking into someone's house, the right thing to do. No, it's not. It's damn rude, also disrespectful, and it's also potentially dangerous if you walked into someone's wrong house. Walking into a supermarket, taking what you want, you know, again, that's been disrespectful not only to the supermarket, but, you know, does it need to be done? Riding a bicycle for it, again, doing that. I can ride my bicycle for it and do what I want. So, you know, if we look at those 2 points, if they're going to an organisation and they're being taught these things, are they still going to accept, is that wrong? You know, are they putting their times of being in the right place? Or is it social media now leading the platform saying, yeah, let's go and smash the place up and let's go and organise a big thing?
I think Brian Sims, who wrote, who commented on a piece. Brian Sims is right. I forgot which magazine or online organisation he's writing for at the moment, but excellent writer. And he put it quite rightly. He said yesterday in this post that there are no consequences, and if there are no consequences, then it is inevitable that it's going to happen. And kids have absolutely no consequences whatsoever from the moment they go to school until they leave school at aged 16 or 18. Until that time, the law protects them and says that, oh, you can't do anything. And the problem with that, in my book, is that they grow up with a sense of entitlement, and an arrogance that nothing can happen to them. And it is a massive shock when they suddenly get out there in the real world at 16 and 18 and find out that things aren't quite the same, because people have different standards. One of the I know for a fact that watching the lad who was giving the security guard a good, he's just plain rude, pushing him around. He couldn't have been more than 14, 15. Nobody would do that if they thought there was going to be a consequence to it.
Well, this is what it is, Ian. There is no consequences. You know, and this is what the problem is. You know, if it's a security guard, guest safety officer, there's never enough consequences. I mean, even some police officers, they get assaulted and things that get away with it. You know, I've only got to look at my assault. Nothing was ever done about it. You know, no one was charged. Police gave up on it, and they even had all the evidence. But this is what the thing, when there's no consequences, people stop caring. They know they can push it to the exact limit. And that's what they're doing. They're pushing it to the exact limit, and they take it as far as they can because there is no consequences. You know, right or wrong. You know, is it right? Are we doing it for a laugh? Well, no, it's not a life. You know, you're hurting people, you're upsetting people's lives. Not just that, but, you know, the security officer, the guest safety officer, the police officer, you know, the paramedic. I mean, we've been seeing paramedics get assaulted. You know, that you've got your blue light emergency workers thing, and it's not coming into play. And as you know, we've got our own I think, Mike Kill set up regarding, you know, giving us, you know, rights for guest safety officers and security officers, the same sort of rights. It's gone. You know, it falls by the wayside because, you know, people aren't really interested in what we do. We are you know, we're these people who don't really care. You know, and it goes back to that tick box exercise. We're just security, and security's there. People come in, no consequences, do what you want. Toothless tigers.
Well, that's it. And I suppose I just want to sort of, I'm conscious of the time, so I want to round it off now, because I want to bring it right back to where we actually live and the difference, you know, the environment in which we live in. So you can say, right, in security, we can have this hands, you know, in the shoplifting, we can have this hands-off approach. We can do that if we're in a supermarket, in a, you know, any kind of store. But you can't do that when you're on a door. When you're in the front, when you're a guest safety officer working on a door at a festival, as a, you know, be that licensed or unlicensed, as a guest safety officer, it doesn't matter whether you're licensed or unlicensed. The law certainly doesn't care in reality or properly recognise the difference between the two. That isn't the fault of the police or the SIA or anyone else. That is just people look at it and go, if it looks like a duck, talks like a duck, walks like a duck, then it's a duck. And whether that duck's got a badge on its arm or it's not, doesn't matter. What matters is public perception. And the difference is we can't step back. We can't say, come in. We can't say, yes, by all means, take all the booze off the shelf, or come behind the bar and pour yourself a pint, or go backstage and mingle with the artists. We're not allowed to do that. But the expectations in terms of the level of protection that we're supposed to give to these idiots, is exactly the same. And social media wise, I personally look at, when my understanding of what happened at the O2 Arena was that social media played a large part in generating the crowds, regardless of the expectation that were there. I don't know, Gary, what do you think?
I fully agree with you, and absolutely, social media did play a big part. But let's throw a curveball here, okay? Bouncers, did they work?
Ooh, well, there's no such thing, obviously, as far as we're concerned, as bouncers. But if we're talking about the old style, old school thing, of course they did.
They did work. I'm not saying it's the right way to go forward, but the fact is they weren't licensed. They'd done the job, and how much trouble did they really? How many problems in so many events or festivals or venues did they stop and prevent?
Well, I wouldn't. Yeah, I mean, and I know we would never ever advocate in any way or condone violence, but it's important, I think, that we need to understand the point that it's about achieving a balance. Yeah, I was told by someone yesterday that, oh yes, but your job is to wait for the police. Well, no, it's not, and you can't wait for the police, because part of my role, or certainly when I had a badge, is actually to protect the public. That is my job, and part of that is going to the defense of the public. Now, I remember years ago when people got drunk, they went and talked to the doorman, and then they looked up and they looked up and they looked up even more, and realized they were stood there usually in front of some behemoth, and decided they would come back and have a fight the following day when they were sober. I'll fight him when I'm sober. You're lucky, mate, that I'm drunk, otherwise I would have you. Yeah. Nowadays, they look at somebody who's 2 foot tall, can't speak English in many occasions, not all of them, and think, you know what, I can have him, and they get on with it, and they, and couple that with the sense of entitlement that goes with it, and you're in real difficulties. I could go into a whole host of things which would be worthy of another tale, as I'm sure you've got stories to tell as well. But for me, Gary, there are no consequences to anyone's actions. That social media is going to increasingly become a mechanism whereby organized groups, gangs of people will decide to descend on a venue, be it in the day or at night, in order to achieve their desired goals. And they are totally uninterested in the law as it stands. They are certainly not interested in the likes of the guest safety officers and they're certainly not interested in the safety and well-being of the other members of the public that are around there. Am I missing anything?
I think hit the nail on the head there. You've covered all the arcs.
I do. I feel so. I actually feel so sorry for the security company that operated at the AP Security. I do feel sorry for them. There's no doubt that there is going to be some issue of some description, and I'm sure, because there is nothing that couldn't have been done any better, that couldn't be done better in some point in some way. And these are issues that do need to be dealt with. But social media, having that organized on any event, if you think you can sort that out, I think you're kidding yourself and that you're having a laugh.
I agree with you there.
But anyway, Gary, final word from you.
Final word from me. Perhaps we need more bits and pieces done. Better security training, as I always say.
Yeah.
And perhaps some of these companies do need to start checking out their own risk assessments and have maybe, I don't know if they do, maybe they need to have some sort of thing in play where they're monitoring social media and these targets. Perhaps they might make things a bit better for them.
I guess you can, and I agree with all of that. Of course, we should do everything that we can, but I do think we have to be very, very careful, and that's what sort of is frightening me more and more as I watch the progression of the industry and specifically our sector. Is we are dealing with people that knowingly go out and get themselves drunk. Yeah, deliberately put themselves in a state of vulnerability. At what point do they themselves have to accept responsibility for their actions and the impact of their actions on others? That's sort of my take on it. All right, Gary, goodbye.
Yeah, thank you for your time, and always a pleasure.
Peace out.